It all started in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where houses looked almost identical, lawns were trimmed to perfection, and the homeowners association liked to remind everyone who was really in charge. This was a community where conformity wasn't just encouraged, it was demanded. People painted their homes the same shades, planted the same generic shrubs, and heaven forbid anyone stepped outside the invisible but very real line of rules that the HOA enforced with an iron fist. In the middle of this neat, cookie-cutter suburb lived one homeowner who dared to do something different. He wasn't a troublemaker, he wasn't trying to start a war with anyone. He was simply passionate about growing his own food. On a sunny patch of his backyard, he started with a few tomato plants, some cucumbers, and a small herb bed. Nothing wild, nothing outrageous. Just a peaceful little garden that gave him joy and provided fresh produce for his family. At first, the garden was small enough to fly under the radar. The HOA didn't notice. The neighbors, if anything, seemed curious but not upset, but as the weeks passed, the plants thrived. The tomatoes turned bright red, the cucumbers grew long and heavy, and the herbs filled the air with a fresh, earthy aroma. For the homeowner, it was deeply satisfying. He could walk into his backyard and pick ingredients for dinner that were fresher and tastier than anything from the supermarket. This was the beginning of a storm. Most people, when faced with the crushing authority of an HOA, would fold. They'd dig up the plants, apologize, and move on, angry but defeated. That's what the HOA counted on. That's what they were used to, but not this time. Instead of giving up, the homeowner felt a spark of defiance. Why should growing a few plants that fed his family be punished, while the HOA spent its energy policing things as trivial as the length of grass or the color of someone's front door? It didn't make sense. Instead of tearing out his garden, he doubled down. He began researching the HOA's rules and comparing them to local city ordinances. What he discovered was both surprising and empowering. In his city, residents had the legal right to grow vegetable gardens on their private property. The city even encouraged sustainable living, backyard farming, and homegrown food. The HOA might not like it, but their rules couldn't override city law. Armed with this knowledge, the homeowner decided he wasn't just going to keep his garden. He was going to expand it. The next few weeks became a personal mission. He tilled more soil, built raised garden beds, and planted rows of carrots, lettuce, peppers, and beans. He added berry bushes along the fence line and experimented with corn in a sunny corner. He invested in compost bins, rain barrels, and irrigation hoses. Slowly, his backyard transformed from a simple suburban yard into a miniature farm. The HOA noticed immediately. More letters arrived. They called his garden unsightly. They claimed it was attracting pests. They even accused him of lowering property values, as if fresh vegetables could possibly damage the worth of a home. They threatened escalating fines, legal action, and even liens against his property. But this time, the homeowner didn't panic. He knew the law was on his side. He applied for and received an official city permit for urban agriculture on residential land. That one piece of paper was a shield, a powerful weapon that made the HOA threats meaningless. When the HOA tried to fine him, he responded with a copy of his permit. When they called his garden an eyesore, he sent photos to city officials who confirmed he was fully within his rights. Every attempt they made to shut him down only backfired, because he was prepared and the law was airtight. But he didn't stop there. If the HOA thought his garden was a problem, he was going to make it a lot bigger and perfectly legal. With his newfound confidence, he expanded even more. He built a greenhouse in one corner of the yard. He added vertical planters along the fence. He brought in fruit trees, apples, peaches, plums that would one day provide shade and bushels of produce. What started as a small garden had now become a full-blown backyard farm. Then came the twist that truly drove the HOA over the edge. He decided to make it profitable. Word spread quickly among neighbors and friends. His tomatoes were sweeter than the ones at the store. His cucumbers were crisp and fresh. The herbs smelled amazing. People started asking if they could buy some of his produce. At first, he shared freely, handing out baskets of vegetables as gifts, but soon, Demand grew too high to keep giving it all away. That's when he realized his hobby could become a side business. He set up a small farm stand at the edge of his driveway on weekends. With a charming little sign that read "Fresh from the garden," he sold tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, herbs, and even homemade jams. Neighbors lined up, happy to support local produce instead of overpriced grocery store items. The HOA was furious. They argued that he was running a business in a residential neighborhood, which they claimed was against the rules. But again, the homeowner had done his research. City laws allowed small-scale agricultural sales on private property as long as it was properly permitted. And once again, he had the paperwork to back him up. At every turn, the HOA's authority crumbled. Their letters grew more desperate, their threats more hollow. They tried intimidation, legal jargon, and even public shaming at community meetings, but nothing worked. The homeowner wasn't breaking the law. He wasn't hurting anyone. In fact, he was providing fresh food to the community, and people loved it. And here's the kicker, the OA's own members. The very people trying to shut him down were secretly some of his best customers. They couldn't resist his fresh tomatoes or jars of strawberry jam. They tried to hide it, paying in cash and slipping by quickly, but the irony wasn't lost on him. As the seasons passed, his farm thrived. What was once a small patch of soil had grown into a carefully managed, highly productive urban farm. He expanded his offerings to include eggs from backyard chickens, honey from a beehive, and seasonal crops like pumpkins in the fall. He even partnered with local restaurants who loved his fresh, organic produce. Financially, it became a steady income stream. Emotionally, it was a victory like no other. He had turned the HOA's attempt to punish him into a personal triumph. Every vegetable sold, every dollar earned, was a reminder that the HOA had failed. The HOA, meanwhile, lost credibility. Residents grew tired of their constant nitpicking and pointless battles. People began to question why they paid dues to an organization that seemed more interested in crushing individuality than fostering community. Support for the HOA dwindled, and whispers of disbanding it entirely began to circulate. The homeowner never set out to destroy the HOA, but in a way, he exposed them for what they were, an outdated, controlling system that had no real power when challenged with knowledge and persistence. In the end, his farm stood as both a personal victory and a symbol of defiance. It proved that with determination, research, and a little creativity, even the strictest HOA could be beaten at its own game. Every time he saw a neighbor walk away with a bag of fresh produce and a smile, he knew the HOA's so-called eyesore had become the heart of the community. What they tried to destroy ended up feeding and uniting the neighborhood. And so the story spread. Online forums picked it up, local news covered it, and soon it became a viral tale of David versus Goliath in the world of suburban living. The HOA tried to find him for his garden, but instead he built a farm, a business, and a legacy that outlasted their rules. In the end, the message was clear: never underestimate the power of one person willing to stand their ground against unfair authority.